Comms, Session 1, Part 2. We're going to look at the construction team. What I want you guys to be able to do at the end of this part of the session would be able to list the name and describe the purpose of the planning documents used by the site manager. Describe the role of at least 3 tradespeople, probably most of them really I'd like you to be able to do, please. And also to be able to explain the difference between the different types of inspectors. So it's useful to be able to know the roles of some of the people we might work alongside on the building site, and we're going to look at them now. Firstly, the man in charge on site is the site manager. In Scotland, we always used to call him a site agent. Some people might also call him a construction manager. So essentially his job is to make sure that the site runs smoothly and that people are working safely, essentially. To help him with his organisation, he would use a document called the Programme of Works and various other documents which we're going to look at now. And also he'd be the first sort of point of call if there were any sort of issues on site, if you felt someone was working unsafely or putting you at risk, or sort of stopping you being able to do your job effectively. You should speak to the site manager first and foremost, and sort of he'd be the sort of first point of call to sort of sort things out, really. So first, look at the Programme of Works. It's a planning document. It splits the construction process into chunks, and basically says when each chunk should be carried out in which plot, and that means that basically you're not kind of rushing forward with all of the woodwork at once, for example, before you've run all the pipes and cables, you know, because obviously if you start putting walls and whatnot in and floors in before you've run all your pipes and cables, you're just going to create an issue for other tradespeople. So essentially it splits the job into logical steps which the site manager would make sure that people follow. And actually, sort of the site manager would then speak to the foreman, and the foreman would speak to the individuals concerned and tell people what they're doing each day, essentially. Material schedule. So the Programme of Works tells us when each job should be carried out, which task. Material schedule tells us what we should be installing in each property, because each property is going to have slightly different things fitted in it. Normally people will buy before it's even built, you know, and they'll sort of specify sort of what they want in the bathroom, for example. They might want chrome taps, brass taps, whatever, yeah, material schedule will tell us sort of what to fit, different type of sanitary ware, etc., etc. So material schedule tells us what to fit. Programme of Work tells us when to fit it. There's also other schedules. There'll be drawing schedules which tell you sort of what drawings are related to the job and where you'd find them. And a drainage schedule would give us information about the sort of drainage side of things, essentially, where the pipes should run, depths of pipes, the gradients, etc., etc. So Programme of Works tells us when, work schedule tells us what, job specification tells us who. So the job specification tells us who's responsible for carrying out each task. And also tells us the standard that should be carried out, an agreed standard. So first, the people that we're going to look at on the site, or after the site manager, is the site engineer, because he's one of the first people who's going to come on the site. Site engineer sets out where the property is going to be, essentially. He'll sort of come out, he'll sort of measure, look at the drawings, measure off known points, and set out where the house is going to be. And then people would then start to dig the foundations at that point. The foreman's kind of the second in command after the site manager, and he would talk to the site manager and pass on information to the trades and tell people what they need to be doing every day. Okay. Ground workers. So ground workers are the people who prepare the ground. They'll sort of dig the ground, prepare cement, sort of do all the sort of heavy work essentially. They are absolutely essential to the running of the site, but they're not recognised as skilled craft operatives. So skilled craft operatives are people who have got a qualification in one of the sort of following really. Could be bricklayers. They would sort of carry out working with bricks and blocks. Joiners work with wood, might fit, say for example, doors, windows, architrave, skirting board. Okay. Interestingly, sort of in my experience on site, it's actually more often than not the joiners fit the plasterboard. But if in the test, if it asks you who does the dry lining, they put the answer as the plasterers, because that's City and Guilds. That's the City and Guilds answer. Okay. So plasterers, plaster walls and sand them and smooth them. They may also sort of carry out dry lining work, and this is, you can see that this is plasterers doing some dot dab dry lining just here. So they're putting on some sort of adhesive onto the wall, and then they put plasterboard onto it and then plaster over. Electricians essentially do any work relating to electricity, generally speaking. Heating and vent fitters, they would probably fit like big boilers, big heating systems, stuff like that. Plumbers would generally work more on sort of domestic sort of sized systems. Gas fitters, any work relating to gas, straightforward enough. Decorators, they kind of make the place look pretty at the end of the job essentially. And inspectors, we talked about inspectors briefly in the last part of this section. And there's inspectors who check various things. There's ones who might meet the requirements of the building regs, some might check the compliance with the water regs, and some might be more specific to sort of electrical, essentially. So the building control officer, it's also known sometimes as building control inspector, is employed by the local authority, by the local council, okay? And they would check the plans before the work carried out, and they'd also check at different stages of the work. For example, sort of check the drainage systems before that they've got the appropriate runs in them before they get backfilled, check the foundations are the standard that they should be, and then they come in at various stages, and then at the end they would issue something called the completion certificate, which says that the work has been carried out and meets the standards set out in the building regulations. Okay. And finally, building services inspector. A building services inspector is essentially a building control officer, but more specifically sort of trained in one of the building services, be it sort of plumbing, heating, or electrical. So that's essentially what a building services inspector would be. Someone would maybe come out and check sort of the gas work, check the electrical work, check the plumbing work. Okay. Now it is time for your second task.